Okay, the hour of 7:30 having arrived, and most of the members having arrived, the Water Quality Management Committee November 20th meeting will come to order. I have two observations from the chair before we get into the agenda here. One is to welcome back Matt Patrick.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed all the meetings.
The Senate's loss is our gain.
I tried to read all the minutes today. And
you were good.
I fell asleep around 3 o'clock. I'm trying to get the bumper sticker off here. It's not cooperating.
That's perfectly fine. In this room, I think you got a lot of votes.
Thanks.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is, if any of you have not seen it yet, Wynn has sent an analysis around of the 208 plan.
Oh, I just sent it comments. I had it. Yeah.
Well, it's so far above my head, I can't even understand it, but it's the reason we have this guy on this committee. It's brilliant.
It's not brilliant.
Well, it takes a lot of points that they were going to breeze right over and brings it to their attention that they're breezing over it. I was impressed.
I hope.
But take a look at it when you get a chance.
Was that forwarded to all of us?
Yeah. This afternoon. I just finished it in time to send it in. I've been working on the figures for it for a couple of days. Well, yeah. The one thing I want to say about that is that long thing that you say you don't understand. Yeah, it's a complicated thing, but they were ignoring it, and so I tried to give them the other figures, and then I had a little paragraph saying, "Common sense says this has to be the case." So maybe somebody will look at it now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, if anyone doubted he was a numbers guy,
Oh,
you will now find out he's a numbers guy.
I get down to the weeds sometimes.
For sure. All right, the agenda first item is the follow-up discussion on the Rands Canal and Fiddler's watershed. A number of issues came up at the last meeting when we talked about it broadly, and Sia and Virginia and others have done some follow-up on those issues, and why don't we start with that?
Great. Well, I guess the first point that was brought up is to try and get the names straight on the ponds. And so I will remind us that there's according to this map, there's Cedar Lake, and then there's Flax Pond here, and Trout Pond that goes to Fiddler's Cove. So
But what you're pointing at doesn't show up on the...
Oh, that's right. That's right. Right. So Rands Canal, which is this canal right here, has Flax Pond, and
That's perfect.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
and Fiddler's has trout, and the town map, which you guys can't read, says that this, which was Flax Pond in the MEP report, was Trout Pond. To not make this more confusing than it is, the MEP report and the USGS quadrangle maps are consistent. So the town map had the wrong name because the town, I talked to the GIS coordinator, Bob Shea, they will defer to USGS quadrangle maps because they're a primary data source. And the quadrangle map is consistent with the MEP, or MEP is consistent with the quadrangle map. The name, drumroll please, is Flax Pond. So MEP's right. Virginia was going to talk to some locals.
I talked to people who had grown up in North Falmouth or lived there since the 1950s and so on. And they all said it's Trout Pond. So the local name is Trout, and the town map reflected that information. But somehow USGS got a different thing, and I think we're going to have to go with that and the MEP report, or it's going to be total confusion. Just to add a little bit to it, Cedar Lake was occasionally called Flax Pond. So go figure. And it's in the town of Falmouth, the book, the 300 coming. Yeah.
Okay. When
Virginia, I just wanted to ask, isn't there a Flax Pond East Falmouth. Is
Yeah.
Yes, there
yes.
are several flax ponds. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Several
actually a
ponds.
fairly common name. Sometimes they're called
That's
grassy
very
ponds.
creative.
We have several oyster ponds. If we
And
can-
Certainly have
They
oyster
travel
ponds.
in between
Yeah.
Eel
villages
ponds,
too
right?
much.
Right.
Yes, they couldn't think of many names back then, I guess. They
Well-
used them over and over.
Yeah, there are like 10 of them.
Yes.
There we go. But anyway, so that explains the town map versus the MEP. and
Exactly.
USGS.
Okay.
So that's a check. The other main, sort of a big question that came up was the build out. And as you may recall from 2 weeks ago, this 19,060, or rounded up to 2,000 kilograms, seemed like a very large additional load from quote-unquote build-out in this watershed. And I went into the data disks of the MEP reports and talked to Ed Eichner, who's the man who produced them, and then talked to Brian Curry. And it seems that most of this load is coming from two parcels at the interchange of 151 and 28. So let me find a good, so there's a parcel here that I can maybe show you here better. The interchange is here. There are two parcels right here. They're the Ballymead parcels, and they were zoned by the town meeting for senior housing, and the maximum number of units from senior housing is 180 units. The MEP report took that and assumed both parcels could have that, one being larger than the other, and estimated 240 units. And that's where that huge buildup comes from, is this 240 units. The other thing they didn't assume or consider is that if a large housing development went on those properties, you would have an innovative alternative septic system. You'd have some sort of a cluster system that would be reducing the nitrogen to flows, because you need a groundwater discharge permit at minimum 10 milligrams per liter, not the 25. So that is, I think, the answer to the mystery of where is this large build-out coming from. There are also a couple of large 10-acre type parcels in this watershed and infill, but the lion's share, I mean, if you sort of do out the math on that, on those parcels, you get pretty close to the build-out with that over build-out. The third,
Could we just stay
Okay,
on that
yep,
for a
if
minute?
you've got-
Okay,
that's
so,
true.
so we have a number that is larger than in all likelihood would ever occur. We just don't know what the actual number under more reasonable assumptions would be. At least we don't know it at this point, correct?
we don't know, but we could certainly, if we were to say, make an assumption of 10 milligrams per liter for a cluster system and the maximum number of units, you could calculate that out.
Right, okay.
I mean,
So-
DEP recently has said in big developments like that, like we were talking about over in East Falmouth,
Yeah.
that they had to supply zero new nitrogen. if
No
they're-
net.
No net. And so I
Nitrogen.
think you can assume that if that big 32-acre parcel were developed for a senior living facility, that DEP would say it's going to be zero net.
Which takes away a whole lot of this build-out option that they gave us.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Good. Steve?
Doesn't this also touch on another subject, which we don't have time to get into now, but we've sort of treated it glibly before, which is how much you discount, so to speak, the way upstream nitrogen.
Right.
I mean, in other estuaries, we've sort of waved our hands and said, agreed with Mike McGrath and said, well, it never really gets there. But we've never officially said that.
He's right. We've never officially said it. This, however, is just at the 10-year travel time. You see that little Z there? That's actually where that line is. So it's not as far as way upstream as the Mike McGrath comments were. 10-year travel time has been sort of the number that planners and towns have been using. And you look at the wastewater treatment plant, and that was a 7-year travel time to get to. So 10 years is not an unreasonable number to look upstream.
And we had one other about the shellfish.
Yeah, we got actually two more that I looked at. So shellfish would be the next one. If you look on the MEP report, I didn't stick it on the slide, but the MEP report on page 102 for Rans and Fiddlers has the locations of the Sentinel stations, and as Steve pointed out, it's at the head of Rans.
The Sentinels.
The Sentinel station, and the Sentinel station is pretty much in the middle, right at the crook at Fiddlers. And so I thought about, Ron and I had gone with Matt Weeks and looked up in Rans and Fiddlers, and the thought is that there isn't room right at the top of Fiddlers. There's boats that are there. Rans, on the other hand, there is an opening, and you wouldn't necessarily put bags or anything in there because boats, I'm sure, go in there to turn around. But there's a potential to, you'd want to look at the numbers you could get in bags or you could get on the bottom. And the mixing, so the hydrodynamic model includes the lower stream, let me find a good the lower stream nitrogen as well as the upper stream nitrogen. And that's what ultimately, so if you were to, if the Sentinel station for Fiddlers is here, say, and you were to do some shellfish down in here, because this was one of the areas we actually thought, maybe a few bags or something would work. The lower nitrogen concentration here would actually affect the water quality throughout the system. And to really know if you removed 100 kilograms, what would happen at the Sentinel station, you'd want to run the model. But it's certainly not a nothing. It's not a nothing improvement to make improvements here, which you should pay attention to because we're also going to talk about stormwater, which is the last thing you guys asked about. The other thing I wanted to point out is there was a comment made that there are areas where shellfish are already present, and since they were there, quote unquote, that would have maybe been already incorporated into the reduced nitrogen numbers. And I think the point I wanted to make is those maps show where they could be, but they're not necessarily areas where the shellfish are at maximum potential. So these areas have been degraded. And so although the shellfish maps say they're suitable habitat, it doesn't necessarily mean that lots of shellfish are actually present. So if you were to seed quahogs or seed oysters, and you knew you had 1 million there as opposed to the 10,000 that are, if you put 1 million versus 10,000, you would see hopefully a difference in future water quality for a bunch of different reasons. So just because they say that it is a suitable habitat doesn't mean that it's been overfished is another sort of point. So there's not quite the regeneration that one would expect from a really thriving resource. So we'd want to do a viability study. So I wanted to make those points about the shellfish.
Right.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I didn't make the second point. I don't know who did. I'm
I don't
not
either.
dwelling on that. But the first point, I just thought if we're looking ahead and you have an ongoing shellfish, but I agree with everything makes some effect on everything else in the world, but it might be minimal. And I was hoping that the people with the shellfish expertise, if you look on page 20 and 21, figures Roman numeral 2, 3A, and 3B, it shows shellfish suitability area, implying that you can't put them up toward the heads of either of these bodies of water. But maybe you shellfish experts know otherwise, and really you can put them up there.
Well, for Fiddler's Cove, you definitely can't because that's fresh water.
Okay.
When you look at the salinity, it's so far inland and it's getting discharged that it's fresh water, so the shellfish won't grow.
And then the other aspect is, if you wanted to run some test then in Rand's Harbor, maybe you could
it's there.
Appropriate to take a small part of the existing shellfish demo and see. And or ask John Ramsey what percentage effect a given amount of removal downstream has on upstream.
Yeah, the model.
It depends how soon you want the answer.
Sure. Okay.
And we hadn't really tried to drill so deeply into what
Right.
the shellfish solution would be. It was really very much at 30, I mean, we're at 30,000, I was at 30,000.
Right, Ron.
Thanks, Eric. I did some calculations on 2 interventions, possible ones. And one of them, first was just looking at urine diverting toilets to see how far that would go based on if they were acceptable. And what I found that for both was that well, at least for fiddlers, you need about 61 houses with urine diverting toilets to deal with
What
the excess nitrogen.
what did you use for the nitrogen removal capability of?
4 kilograms per year, because that's what's in urine. Except now you have to factor in a percentage of what George Hoyfelder always comments on about people peeing in the shower. But I don't know how many people do that, basically. But that would be about 61 houses for that, and about 35 for RANs, would, based on, without the build-out, okay, without build-out. And so it could be, and that would be about, say, 20 to 30% of the houses, or 20%, that's about 20% of the houses in those 2 watersheds. And so that was just looking at that option, which is a relatively minor intervention and low-cost thing to do if it were necessary, and if people...
Could you give me those figures? Could you send me those figures?
Yeah, I can send them. And then the other was the shellfish, just to get an idea of what could shellfish do. And for fiddlers, I basically, I only looked at 4 months of the load because there's such a huge turnover in these estuaries of water. If you look at the data in the report, I mean, it's like Fiddler's Cove, just based on the tidal exchange, it's just over a day, and with two tidal actions, because the tide's quite high on that side, so there's a lot of flushing. And for rants, it's about once per day, just on that volume basis. Plus, you've got the groundwater flow going in, and I looked at that too, but it's relatively minor compared to the overall, the tidal. It's a relatively small percentage. But in looking at the oyster option, just for oysters, for fiddlers, and this is assuming that we're really worried about the summer nitrogen, because in the winter there's flushing and it's cold.
remember that.
It may be the case. That's the only. I mean, if you're going to use oysters, that's all you can look at anyway, because they're sleeping the rest of the time.
Right.
So it's really from June, say, through September, and you need about 6 for and this would be like with bottom planting or grow out. It's to grow out. It's not like Little Pond where we keep
Right.
it to the little small size. And you need about 665,000 for Fiddler's Cove, which would be about, with bag culture, would be about 2 acres roughly of it, assuming some area for nursery as well, somewhere there for bag. Right, but I mean, talking about grow out to seeding size, okay, which is whatever.
Yeah.
So right, but it's a private one, so I don't know. Maybe we could use space in it. And then for bottom planting, it's about half that, because you can double the density. You can get much higher. So that's about 1 acre. And so for fiddlers, then you have a 14-acre pond or water area. So you then figure that 1 to 2 acres of that planted somehow, just as a rough estimate. It isn't completely beyond capacity. And then for rams, it's again about 1 acre and half an acre. 1 acre for bag culture and half an acre for bottom planting.
Okay.
So, and that's 9 acres. So, according to the report. So it looks like this is just throwing it out there to do some calculations, see what it
That's
is.
great. Yeah.
And that's using the Barnstable County Extension, Cooperative Extension's figures for nitrogen and oysters. And we're growing them out to full size here,
Right.
not to the
So you
small
said,
size.
yep.
But also growing seed if we need, or bringing it from Little Pond if we can. But it's possible
Right.
to
Right, Win.
do it.
Is the kind of thing we're thinking about taking Little Pond oysters, which have grown for the first year, and then moving them for the summer before the season opens to these other places that need cleaning up and using the greater cleaning power of those oysters in those other places. To clean, in other words, to have, so is that the kind of model we're thinking in terms of?
Well, not necessarily. I think that's a little complicated because of the effort. Okay, if we had floating bag culture of about whatever it is, 20% of that area, okay, somewhere in these water bodies, and then you would just take them from there in the fall and bottom plant them. That would probably be the easiest thing. And
Right,
you don't have to
right, in the
transport-
same place.
Same place.
How is the bottom? Is it muck or is it sand? What do we know?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Yeah, but
Well-
it's probably.
Question.
Yeah, yeah. But there, I'm just saying, or if it's not that, then you have racks, if you don't want floating. But then we need the bigger area, which isn't that much really. So it's 2 acres. So the thing, we're 2 acres for fiddlers, but so it's but it isn't just this. This is 100% if it's oysters, 100% if it's urine diverting toilets. If it's a combination, or we put some redundancy in there, or whatever other things can come up. There's a way of thinking about this, because it isn't 5 tons of nitrogen we're dealing with, per year. It's much less, it's,
Yeah, the non-traditionals work, as we were saying last week, they work very well when you've got these lower, under 1,000 kilograms, it starts to become really reasonable to start looking at non-traditional solutions. Because you need area, I'm not supposed to.
Right, we got it.
Yeah, so I think those are great points.
Yes, any other,
So stormwater was the
stormwater,
last thing
say
I
that
wanted
one,
to
yeah.
bring up. I got on the GIS, and there's a layer, and you can look at where there are outfalls, which are direct pipe discharges as well as sort of sheet runoff, and the DPW, Scott Schluter has been great about sending me the maps that show the drainage. And in Fiddlers and Rands, there is not a pipe that has been mapped. Rands has a lot of private roads, and those roads have not been surveyed. So, some boots on the ground in Rands could sort of be the next step to confirming that. But one of the things that sort of popped out and we're going to talk about Wild Harbor next, where there are actually outfalls, is the sheet runoff coming from the marina. There's and this whole road area, it's fun when you start looking at arrows on maps, but this road all runs off from here into Fiddlers. So there's some sheet, there's definitely some runoff. And if you look at the pie charts, it says for Rand's Canal, of the controllable load, 17% is stormwater, which on the scale of stormwater contribution is very, very large. Usually it's between 5 and 7%. So if we were going to take a look at this, because it's probably not low-hanging fruit, but it's certainly a large contribution, and the ultimate load reduction is small, this might be able to get you some of the way there. Unfortunately, it's a very decentralized input. There's not a pipe, it's a bunch of, so diverting it and thinking about vegetated swales and that sort of thing. They did on Bay Road, which is a dirt road. Has anybody, you know Bay Road, I know Bay Road. It's great to have kids, because then they have friends who live in these places that you never knew existed. The fish ladder and the herring run, as you said, it's fresh up there, so there's a herring run. They did a stormwater mitigation as part of putting in the herring run, and there was just no room on Bay Road to put anything. They put a little swale, but Scott said, we thought a lot about trying to put in working with Conservation Commission, put in some sort of a vegetated swale, and they had 3 feet. And it's a dirt road, which is silted up. So the stormwater is going to be an interesting challenge, but it would be worth, as you get into the higher level of detail and the planning for this, you'd probably want to take a close look, because it's 17%.
Right.
And so that's what we've learned about Rands and Fiddlers.
All right, any further comments on Rands and Fiddlers?
Just one more comment. When I mentioned the oyster area and the number of oysters, it assumes only what goes into growth and not the microbial denitrification side, which is being studied now. So it's very conservative.
Yep.
It could be much
Could be
less
more.
than that.
Well, it also assumes, Ron, that you're going to get that biomass out of there. Growing 3-inch oysters and leaving them there doesn't get you any nitrogen remediation.
Well, you just walk out to the areas where we put oysters last year and have a look and see what's going on there.
These are closed areas, aren't they?
Close to what?
Aren't these closed?
Closed.
No, the shellfishes are in there all the time.
No, it's not a closed area. It's seasonally closed, but everywhere in Falmouth is seasonally
Yeah.
closed. This area opens.
And they're there all the time. I mean, apparently they're
Good.
going along, so there's something happening. The bottom's good enough to attract, according to Matt Weeks, the rakers and diggers and stuff, so.
And mostly they're out here. They're out in here, in this area, and then in Rands, they were along here and along here. And there is plenty of sand. You remember when we were
Yeah.
out there? Plenty of sand along these two corridors for quahogs or oysters.
Very good. Steve, yeah.
At the risk of beating a dead horse, I just want to build on what Virginia said. If the upper part of Fiddler's is fresh water, and I'm sure Virginia's right, that is proof that you don't have mixing, because it's not bringing the salt. Any mixing that's there is not sufficient to bring the salt into the upper part. So if you use shellfish or whatever to take nitrogen out of the lower part, that's not going to dilute the upper part. And that's consistent with looking at the map of the nitrogen concentration and seeing that it's very high in the upper part. And that probably contributes to the lower amount that's also in the lower. I mean, it has to go somewhere, so it has to go out through the lower part. So you have to fix the upper part. That's the worst place, and that's where the sentinel is. However you fix that, once you fix that, I submit that the lower part will then be much better.
Sure.
I would agree with that statement. My source of information was a graph that showed salinity, and normal salinity is like around 28, and so that one was way down. It was done actually by colors, but so if you have enough groundwater coming in fast enough, it just overwhelms the signal of the tidal change. And so
It
that's
isn't so much that the water doesn't get up there,
There's-
it's just diluted so quickly.
so quickly by so much water arriving at that point. Yeah, and but to your final point was, if the Sentinel station is near there, it's going to have somewhat of a different kind of solution, because it's not really salt water.
I'm saying if you fix the upstream part,
Yeah.
you've probably fixed the downstream part.
Could
Sure.
quite be.
And you certainly fixed the sentinel station.
Yes.
Right. Win.
Well, just, when you say is nitrogen still the main factor in the upper area?
Well,
or is-
you could have some phosphorus, just the way you would in a freshwater pond.
Right.
So there could be a phosphorus component to this picture.
At least part of the year or part of the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The density of the houses there, I mean, every lot just about is built on. And it's been there now for 30 years, 40 years. So I think the ground's pretty saturated, which would mean the phosphorus would break through and get into the,
And they're close to the water. so-
and it would flow into the water.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also, according to calculations that I did from the report, about 180,000 cubic feet of water coming in every day, on average, to each one. Well, they didn't break it down.
Fresh water coming in?
Fresh water coming in
Groundwater.
from
Groundwater, yeah.
groundwater and
Ground-
precipitation
Yeah.
combined. It's about that much, so.
I
it's,
can't get a good figure. What is that term? How much is coming in from the ocean every day?
Well, the ocean is, yeah, it depends, say, how far back does it go? If it's
Yeah.
not, if there's salinity drops off a lot, it may just be near the opening, which is what we assume for the other.
I don't have a feeling.
And you
I think they
also have to remember that fresh water is lighter than salt water,
Yeah.
and so it floats on. So you could have a tongue of salt water coming up inside and then fresh water on top. Complicated.
I don't have a feeling for how much 180,000 cubic feet is cubic.
I don't, well, I can tell you the tidal prism is, the Union Valley tidal prism is 2.2 million for fiddlers and 1.4 million.
So a lot more
Cubic
fresh, a
feet.
lot more salt water than
Salt
fresh
water coming in, yeah, it's like 10% roughly. yeah.
You don't need numbers, just look at page 142.
142.
Stare at the colors for a while.
Stare at them?
Right.
Okay.
Well, you all have that on your computers.
Yes, right,
Or the gray levels.
right.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
okay.
I didn't bring that one.
Okay. I would advise the committee, we've been joined by a new reporter from the Enterprise, I believe.
You have. I'm sorry I was late. I was honestly wandering around trying to find this place. I'm Landon. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. We're, just by way of background, what we're doing here, as you know, the last few years we've spent a lot of time on the south-facing estuaries, Little Pond, Green Pond, Great Pond, Wacoit Bay, that area. Following the town meeting and the voters and their actions, we thought we would sort of return to our original mission, which is to look at all 15 estuaries in town. And so what we're doing tonight is the first couple that are in the northwestern corner of the town. And we're looking at those. Tonight we're going to look at the next one, and then sort of move down the coast systematically. We're looking at them in a sort of a broad-based way. We're not having a consultant paid, except for Sia. We're not paying some engineer to come in and write us a big fat tome about this. We're looking at it, applying mostly our own knowledge from what we've learned in these other estuaries, and basing our analysis on the Mass Estuaries Project data. So we hope to come around again in the spring and the summer when more residents are in these areas and make a point of meeting with them to bring them into the conversation. But right now the conversation is us, estuary by estuary. So.
Just one moment, just on the salinity question, sorry, interrupt again. But
Sure.
I just looked at this and Virginia's right, it looks very blue, but that blue is 27 ppt.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
What,
according to the
and
chart.
what's the green? Are you
The green
sure?
is, it goes up to 30. So there's really not much gradient all the way back there,
Well, then
according to
I
the,
stand corrected.
yeah,
No
yeah. It looks,
kidding.
no, it looks blue and clear like a swimming pool, but
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
actually,
All right.
according
So-
to what you're looking at. what
Rand's
you
is
showed.
fresh though, I think, because Rand's has the herring run.
No, Rand's is actually less, it's more
Okay.
saline
More saline?
than that part of,
Okay.
yeah. The lowest is about 20, I mean, these are minor, 27, 28. 28.
Okay, well then that's enough
One-
salinity.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We
okay.
got enough salt for the
We got plenty of
creatures.
silverwares.
Plenty of
Well, they're growing there now, so
Good
it's
to
good to
know.
know that they're growing in the right environment.
Yeah, you have to look at the scale.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Wild Harbor MEP report, and once again, the potential alternatives in terms of technologies to remove nitrogen. We all have a handout, and if we had an extra copy of it, do we by any chance?
I do have an extra copy for the press.
There we go.
Where did I put it is the question. Oh, yes.
This thing here, yeah.
Yes. Wild Harbor aerial
Al,
view.
I gave it to Ally. Ally, I can email you one. The press wasn't here, so I gave it to our recorder. So
It's also in here somewhere.
yeah, I'll email you.
We'll have more for her. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
So, you want to walk through this with us?
Sure, happy to. I made some large and some smaller, so hopefully you can see the maps. Wild Harbor, Eric and I were talking about this, and he thought it would be great for us to maybe get to know these areas that are in the north country of Falmouth a little better. And this is the interchange where we started last week, and I got 151 and 28 mixed up, but this is Route 151. And this is Route 28, and if you come down, there's this little, I usually go down Pine Street and then Wild Harbor Road, and this is Wild Harbor. So you can see, is everybody familiar? Has everybody been to Wild Harbor?
If you also say it's the beach for New Silver Beach, because a lot of people know where New Silver Beach is.
Right.
And
Okay.
so New
Yep.
Silver Beach looks
And-
out on Wild Harbor.
And the thing I was going to say
for
is
all,
this
for all
is,
the people who go to Old Silver Beach, if they look to the northwest, they will see
Yes,
this area,
That's right.
the Wild Harbor
Which is
area.
it?
yeah,
this is Old Silver
Oh, that's
Beach
Old
right
Silver
here.
Beach.
that's
This
right.
is New Silver Beach.
Right.
And this is Quaker Road that some of you may or may not know, that goes over our beloved Herring Brook
Yep.
and New Silver Beach. So this is where we are. And here are the watersheds. And these are the main watersheds. And one of the things I want to point out, two main things about this. One is that there's Wild Harbor, which is here, And then there's Wild Harbor River, which is here. And although they're considered part of the same watershed, I think for planning purposes, it does make sense to think about Wild Harbor and Wild Harbor River, which is this here, this feature, as different. They come together and they mix right about here. And so there is some influence of, the water quality here will influence what happens over here. But really, I would see them kind of distinct. And then the second feature is this polygon is an approximation of the sewer service area, the new Silver Beach sewer service area. These are the 200 and something homes, plus or minus, that are currently sewered. And here's another picture of the new Silver Beach sewer service area. But I wanted to orient you. Steve thought it would be helpful to see it oriented at a larger scale, so you can see where it is. And then if you come in here, so this area is the Wild Harbor. This would be the shoreline of Wild Harbor. And there are approximately 230 properties that are served, plus the school. And the MEP report did an estimate of the nitrogen removal. When the report was finished, the sewer system had not come online, so they did not include the reductions in the current load. But they did say it's about to come online, so they took some assumptions of the gallonage they took their water use numbers from their data disks, took the properties, assumed 10 milligrams per liter discharging, came up with the removal of 230 kilograms a year from the sewer that's in there, that's at Wild Harbor. These are the sentinel stations. Last time we talked about wanting to have a better look at where they are. WH1 and WH1 are the same station for the purposes of monitoring from the Buzzards Bay Coalition. They do the nutrients, the nitrogen and the phosphorus and the SECI and the chlorophyll here, but they do the dissolved oxygen here. This they do every 2 weeks, the nutrients, and they do dissolved oxygen every 5 days throughout July and August in the summer. So these two stations are not, I was very excited to see two separate stations, but then I was dismayed that there's only one station for nutrients and one for dissolved
Why do they have
oxygen.
them in different places?
Because every 5 days it's easy to get here. And every 2 weeks, apparently they take a boat. This is taken from a boat. So that's what they do. And then there's another station here. So they come out here, they do by boat, they do this station, they do this station. And then they go up into the river and they do nutrients and dissolved oxygen here. So we've got, these are our sentinel stations for Wild Harbor. And this is kind of I think a very useful picture to show the density. This is a very densely populated area.
So are you saying there are a total of 4 sentinel stations?
There are 3 monitoring stations.
Oh, well, okay, monitoring stations, but in terms of meeting a TMDL at the sentinel station?
WH1 and
Okay.
WH2.
There we go, okay.
Fair enough.
And here are the statistics. Wild Harbor, the main basin, needs about 2,000 kilograms removed. So it's got a much higher load reduction goal, according to MEP report. The river wants 643. So those two separate areas have 2 different goals. And the system itself needs 2,751, which is some of those 2. So that's what we're looking at, a pretty big load reduction in Wild Harbor and a smaller one in the river. And I think this is the pie chart that shows that 72% is wastewater of the incoming load, controllable incoming load. 8% is impervious surfaces, and 20% is from fertilizer. And that's a huge number. 7% is from residential fertilizer, and that bright green is 13%, and that is from a golf course.
Way inland.
Not way inland, wow.
Which golf course?
Ballymead.
That far away, that's way inland.
Well,
And I looked a lot at this, because if you look at, I have to show you this, because it's in the rainbow spreadsheet, I didn't put it in here. The load from the golf course is over 1,000 kilograms.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting about that is if you look at the watersheds, Ballymead crosses all three. So there's about 200 and something kilograms. I have these numbers written down if you want the actual numbers. In fact, you can look in the report on page. I pulled the page number out. I will tell you page number is. Page number is. Yeah, it's right there. On page 44 is our most favorite rainbow spreadsheet table, and it shows 1,209 kilograms a year coming from golf courses. 278 into one sub-watershed and the balance in the other sub-watershed. And if you look at this sort of clover leafy looking development, this is Ballymead. And it does cross the golf course and crosses in. There's a paragraph on the preceding page or so, in the build-out area that talks, they interviewed the turf manager at Ballymead and got average application rates and multiplied that. They had done a survey of golf courses. So this was a ground level look at Ballymead and an assumption about the fact that there's 20% attenuation. And that's all documented in the report. So that's a pretty big number. And the first thing, just a second, I would just want to say about that is that as we're getting into the details, we want to go talk to the golf course because I know there's been some initiatives with Ballymead and other golf courses.
I dimly remember, although I'm not quite, I'd like to have correction on this if I'm wrong, that Ballymead was one golf course that we were not particularly successful, and Falmouth Friendly Lawns was not particularly successful in getting reductions. And I wondered how much, are these figures are these new figures, relatively new figures?
These are the figures that came into a report that was published in 2013.
13.
When was the research done? do you know?
Before 2009.
It was done before 2009.
And there's a very interesting paragraph on page 38. It's the fourth paragraph down, and I'm not going to read it to you, but it does talk about the loading, the fertilizer application rates that were reported from the golf course to MEP that they used.
Okay, and those are 2009, so after...
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it's exactly 2009, but they said that because the wastewater treatment facility didn't come online until 2009, they weren't considering it. So that's why I'm saying 2009. Could have been 2003.
I'd like to get newer figures to know whether Ballymead has reduced
That would be a very important thing to do because
Yeah.
that is such a significant contribution to the load. You'd really want to sit down before we have a community meeting and find out exactly what
Right.
they're doing. And they've gone through some different management. They certainly wanna know.
We have a new bylaw that they probably are following now, so maybe there's,
They're way upstream.
maybe it's had some impact.
Sure.
I can ask Ed Nash, who is a very keen supporter of the golf courses doing the right thing.
But I've heard, I've not seen any numbers, that like the Woods Hole Golf Club has very little impact on.
That's
On
because the flushing there is all day, every day.
Oh, right.
So there's,
Well, this is pretty open to flush.
well, not much flushing at Ballymead.
No, I'm talking about once it gets to the Wild Harbor, looks pretty open to me.
Well,
it's the
so
river,
not the
Ballymead
river.
gets
the river
into-
system.
Oh, the
Yeah.
river.
Not the river and apparently not up in here either,
Okay.
which impacts the water quality right here. Very significant.
Be surprised.
If you look on page 131, you can see that the river, again, subject to looking carefully at the numbers, is much worse than the northern Wild Harbor.
Yeah.
It makes it look as though the northern Wild Harbor is almost the same as Buzzards Bay.
Yes, and a lot of development around it.
Right. And probably quite shallow.
Yes,
Yes.
right, probably quite shallow.
Right.
So,
Shallow, but that was good flushing then. Should be pretty, anyway.
I am going to suggest at some point that we all take a road trip to this estuary and the last two that we dealt with and
Oh, good.
walk around.
I've got waders now, so.
Anyway, we all waited.
Yes, that would be very helpful.
Out there.
Just in time for spring, right?
Maybe the harbor master's office could get us some, but we should do that before winter sets in and
Oh, well, that better be there tomorrow.
tomorrow. But I think it's worthwhile because every time we go someplace, we see these things for ourselves. It helps. So
Okay.
you've got your laundry list here of
And here's
options.
Talked a little bit about fertilizer and stormwater. Right. I meant to talk about stormwater. So, one of the interesting features of Wild Harbor is that there are 2 outfalls. There's one here,
Where? Okay.
right here on this side, and then one off of Moses and one off of, I forget the name of the road, but I wrote it down. And cumulatively, these 2 outfalls are several acres of catchment area. So not insignificant.
There's a very big marsh on the southern one that drains, which was very polluted
Yeah.
before.
It's getting a lot of stormwater too. Like a lot of those little lines flow into here, but boy, how's that marsh doing now? It'd be worth having a look at.
It's certainly improving. It was pretty abysmal before that got
Excellent.
sewered.
So if we look at this at the sewer service area, I was very curious because we have now sewered 230 homes adjacent to an impaired water. And so it was interesting to take a look at what are the things that are impacting this area in addition to the homes. And these storm drains seemed like they were worth taking a look at. So if we get to go on a field trip, it would be great to actually see them in action.
I'm not sure how functional that southern one is. I think the people in New Silver Beach have been complaining for years that they wanted that one rebuilt. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how effective that is at the moment.
Okay. Me either. So stormwater, trying to identify the next things to do that. We could look at locations for permeable reactive barriers. There's always an interest in seeing if there's, because it's such a high dense area, it sort of seems like we could take a look at that. Again, innovative alternative septic systems and eco toilets. Shellfish. This area is closed to shellfishing because of the oil spill, the 1969 Florida, apparently. So it's still closed because of that. And then, of course, there is a plant that may or may not have capacity. We don't know, but there is a...
Well, it's permitted at 10 milligrams per liter. It's been averaging 4. This summer it's been around 3. So it's really working beautifully.
Wow.
It was designed for 60,000 gallons a day, and the peak flows in the summer have occasionally reached 35.
Okay.
So that answers the capacity
So
question.
again, we have an asset with some existing capacity.
Yeah.
But that's tremendous. 4 milligrams per liter?
It's been doing very well.
That's great. That's really So that would mean that the nitrogen removal numbers are half. Like they should be twice what the calculation. So if the calculation is 230 kilograms per year based on 10 milligrams, then if it's half that, you'd have twice the removal.
Right.
Right?
That's good math. You like that.
Well, I also don't,
Yeah.
I don't know what flow they were counting on either.
13,000 gallons per day.
13
13?
as,
13.
As an average over the course of the year.
Gallons per day over the course of a year.
Because that's very much still a seasonal community, although that's changing.
And you said they peaked at 30.
In the summer weekends, they'll peak at 35.
35, yeah.
So this
So
is the
that-
AA, annual average.
What's the mechanism they're concerned about for the effect of an old oil spill on growing oysters? How does it make it dangerous? I can see how it might make you lose money, but you don't tell somebody not to start. The government doesn't tell people not to do business because it might not fly financially. It's that there's some health hazard or something.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the
Oil.
cohogs, really, right? That stuff in the sand, there's oil still.
Yeah.
And that would get into the ground.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wouldn't bother the oysters.
Yeah, as long as the oysters are floating and
in bags.
Unless it's still coming out of the bottom, you know.
Well, I think that is the case, that it's still leaching. The marsh sediments are anaerobic after, I mean, they're aerobic at the surface and then they get anaerobic below. And so the petroleum products have not biodegraded very fast. And so they're still present. And if you disturb the sediments, you'll get a sheen on the
Wow.
water.
Even now.
So, yeah, well, that was George Hampson's information to me not too long ago. a year
So,
or so.
Virginia, if you look, go back to that, there. You see the sewer service area, and we cut that off. And if you notice to the east,
Sorry, we cut what off?
well, look at the size of the lots to the
Yes.
east of that. There's an incredibly dense little community in there.
Yes.
To the south are half-acre lots, which are the Wild Harbor Estates, which are much, much larger. But there's, and again, I think a large part of that community, it's sort of an extension of New Silver Beach, is seasonal. But they're little teeny seasonal houses on tiny lots.
Right.
But very
And-
nice
And the
people.
reason you can still get a Title V on those is that there's distance to groundwater.
That's right, they're higher up.
That line that we cut off is where it drops.
Well, no, I run the Paul White road race every July or whatever.
Yeah.
And so when I go through that neighborhood, they're cheering away, you know. And one guy, look at that old guy, he's doing it.
You're an inspiration to them all, right?
This is a really fun area in the summer. The Wild Harbor has a great sailing program, so we have a chance to race against them. And if you go down here on a Saturday night in the summer, it makes Woods Hole look quiet in the summer.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, oh yes. Woods Hole is quiet on July 4th weekend compared to Hubbard's Place. It's great. There's a yacht club there over on the side. Okay, so this is our options, and then there's always the question of what would you do about build out? It's not as large as Rand's, but there are a few large unbuilt. There's one 16-acre parcel, there are a couple of 5-acre parcels. We do have a town bylaw that would require any subdivisions of 5 or more to have a IA system that gets 12 milligrams per liter. That would take care of some of this for sure. And your ideas for next week, and then our plan is to discuss any outstanding issues as we did with Rand's this week, next time we get together, and then think about a spring road trip, I guess, go on tour.
Well, I haven't given up on the winter one, but,
Well, I was thinking on tour for the neighbors.
oh, right, okay.
Right.
The build-out doesn't add that much, it's like,
No.
to say the least. I mean, it's basically, we're talking about
There's
what,
one big, huge parcel.
yeah. Is that,
The Healer
Healer,
parcel.
got it, yes.
50 acres or so.
But even that, at 2-acre zoning, he's not gonna get that much on it.
Is it 2-acre zoning? I don't think so. It does have quite a bit of wetlands.
There was a number of possible building sites attached to that lot, and it wasn't very big. So I thought it was 2-acre zoning. Maybe it's just because of the wetlands.
I think it's very hummocky, if you want to call it that, high and low and high and low.
All right. I may have said something misleading, and maybe somebody can help explain this to me. I was saying, by looking at one of the charts, one of the color indexed maps in the back of the MEP report, the Wild Harbor River looked much worse than Wild Harbor. But now, if you look at the chart on the MEP estimates of nitrogen
not.
reductions required, Wild Harbor needs about 56% reduction, and the river only 15% reduction,
Yes.
which is a big difference.
Yes.
So what am I missing? Is it that the Wild Harbor is so much better flushed that
Wild Harbor's larger.
I can't get my mind around that yet.
So the loads are probably much, much greater going into Wild Harbor. So these numbers are if you have a load coming in, which is the present watershed load, and then you have a target, it's the difference between the two. So if you look at the Wild Harbor River, the present load is 11, and they're saying that to get to water quality standard that they're looking for, it's 10, plus decimal points. That's it's only 1.5
Yeah, that's where you get the 15% and 56%.
Yeah.
But why is the target load then in the river? Why can that be so much higher for something that looks as though it's not as well flushed as Wild Harbor?
It's a salt marsh system.
Right,
It's-
right, plus there's
it's
not that
not-
much
And salt marsh
development there.
systems have a lot of absorptive capacity. The other thing is going to be just pure area. If you look at the direct atmospheric deposition, that the larger your area, the more the deposition. So there's a difference there. And Sia, can you explain the benthic flux number?
The benthic flux, well, I can explain what it is. Can I explain this one in particular? That means that in Wild Harbor, there is a net uptake in the benthos, which I've seen that in other estuaries. I can't tell you why.
Okay.
Probably in their
But we don't have it in the river.
but a little bit exists in the
Well, yes, some. but-
It's they measured it, and that's what it came out to be, that it's absorbing nitrogen as opposed to giving it off. It's not muck. And that's true, it's sandy bottom at Wild Harbor, for sure.
But then that results in a negative TMDL for Wild Harbor. What does that mean?
Did you can add something? No.
I'm looking
That
at
we
that.
need to add some extra.
It doesn't make sense.
I can't, now I'm really confused.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure that negative number makes sense, is correct.
Maybe it's a typo.
I don't think so.
Well,
No, it's consistent with the numbers to the left of it because of the negative
flux.
benthic flux.
Well, yeah, it is consistent with that. But why then would you have to get anything out of that
I
place?
don't think you need to reduce that much.
Well, it might be that it can, it's below,
We just take the nitrogen out of the river and put it in the harbor. Just kidding.
Big pump.
Well, it would be very interesting to have the Buzzards Bay Coalition Sentinel numbers, the historical change. Have we seen a change in the inner harbor since that sewer plant came online?
Be good to get those numbers.
Yes, excellent idea.
Could we put that as a list
It's
for
on the-
follow-up?
It's on the list. If we were to do a PRB, it looks like, presuming everything flows
So I thought a cool place.
westward, where would you put it?
Because I look at these things for a living, right? Go back up here, so that's not the best map. This is a good map. There's a road, Arlington Street. It's right here. I can't zoom it, well, maybe I could zoom, no, I can't zoom it in with this.
it won't.
If, I could blow it up, but I'd have to go out of this, it'll take me a couple of minutes to get it up, but trust me, it's right about here.
It's a
And,
major artery.
It's you know
Yeah.
Arlington,
Yeah.
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 And probably end to end, it was 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, something like that. But it would capture this whole area.
Yeah. quite a
That's
bit.
what was really interesting when I was just sort of having a cursory look at it. If you could capture all of this area with the PRB, that would be pretty significant.
The other
200
thing
some
that would
houses.
be interesting to look at is if you've got those two stormwater inputs. The one to the south is that whole huge marsh. And if you were to build an ITREC system essentially for your stormwater drain, let it nitrify as it went through the draining that marsh, that might be a pretty nifty way to take out a whole bunch of nitrogen.
That's a really interesting idea.
And maybe I could use it as a segue. What we're doing here is an overview, and we've come up with some ideas and you come up with questions, so that we don't sort of lose this information or have to do it all over again when we get to meeting with the public. I think we should develop some sort of document, like an estuary restoration report or something, so that we put together on 1 or 2 pages a summation of the key points that we thought as we were talking, and of course I would be asking Sia to help us do that. So it would be more or less a standardized format, but it would incorporate the ideas that sort of bubble up as we talk about it, because we're not going to remember all of this when later on we meet with all of the folks of North Falmouth. It's a way to make this time spent discussing these random pieces of information useful down the road.
Absolutely.
And we could modify the PowerPoint as well, so that it's got the details.
Well, I
Map.
think each of these PowerPoints so far is a good overview, but sort of then what? And I would look at our new reporter. We're using a lot of fairly technical terms, benthic flux and kilograms and so on and so forth. And so ultimately, when we meet with the public, it's got to be something that's sort of man in the street friendly. It's got to be more easily digested, and we will need to have thought through what we think are the possibilities that would help then direct the discussion.
Good idea.
Maybe each one of us try to come back next week with a list of the things we learned.
I would suggest that we see if Sia can craft such a restoration report based on the 2 watershed areas that we've talked about so far, and then we'll look and see, do we have all the categories in it?
Yeah, let's do Rands and Fiddlers, since we've hit it twice.
Right.
And now she knows as much as we're going to have to say about it.
Right. Right.
So you're thinking a document, a 1 or 2 page.
Yeah, no more
Yeah.
than 2 pages.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, would it have bulleted points, like facts? Would it start with the facts and figures?
Well,
We can talk about
we
it.
can talk about
Yeah.
it.
I
I'm just
appreciate
sort
it.
of suggesting to the committee that we develop some sort of standardized summation of the thoughts that we have so far.
Well, are these eventually going to be subject to a formal CWMP written by an engineering company?
Good.
Like the southern estuaries and Oyster Pond and so on?
Well,
Or is this a totally different process?
Well, it's sort
we
of,
don't know.
it's our own process in the hopes that we can come up with a better one than what was demanded of us on the South Estuaries, which cost a lot of money, and about 90% of it was unnecessary boilerplate.
Right.
So the premise here is we have enough institutional and experience with this stuff in this town, in this committee, and in the staff person here to get a pretty good head of steam up before the town has to go to that step. But because the town will eventually want to go to that step. But we
Right.
want to have done a lot of the work before it gets there. Yeah. So we don't waste the town's money on more boilerplate.
Right.
But some of it will be describing a process where some additional information has to be acquired, or experiments have to be done, shellfish or questions to John Ramsey.
Right. But if we can narrow the questions down
Right.
to what really matters to us and not.
And what the community finds consistent with their viewpoints.
Sure.
Right, that they think will work, or that they're willing to buy into.
Exactly. Okay, anything further on Wild Harbor? It'll come back next time with some of these questions answered, and like this one, like the last one did. Next item, Division of Marine and Environmental Services is asking the town to fund a temporary position, and they've asked us to endorse the concept, and they have provided a sheet describing the position. And any discussion?
One thing. I thought that the list of activities seemed logical to me based on everything that Ron and C have reported. My only question was on the next page, recommended minimum qualifications, education and experience. I would have expected they would have required at least a high school diploma or equivalent. plus 2 years. I was a little surprised that that wasn't in there, and I believe it needs to be in there. And it may have been an
Yeah,
oversight.
good point. You're not looking for a college graduate, but someone should be able to read.
Well, and to have had enough persistence to graduate from high
Yeah.
school or get a GED. And that's what it usually says, high school diploma or GED equivalent.
So they aren't actually asking us for our input, are they? Or,
They were asking for an
is this-
endorsement.
Is this
so-
changeable at this point? or-
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay, good. Okay.
I have several comments, but I don't know if they want to go through them now. But
So do we need a motion
We do.
to endorse this temporary position of shellfish propagation manager, which would run until from April 1st to November 8th, based on this job description by the Marine and Environmental Services.
That sounds like a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Got it. For the benefit of the press, this shellfish program is something that this committee has been very active in, and particularly in Little Pond and now other places where these things are being moved. But what we're happy to see happening is that the town's environmental agency is stepping up to the plate to carry it on and keep it going. Ours was for a limited purpose of trying to define how much nitrogen you can remove with shellfish. Theirs is the broader plan of how do we keep this going and the manpower and the shellfish and all the apparatus that you need to do it. This committee is not set up to do that, and they are. So we're very happy to see that they want to do it, and obviously we're endorsing their effort to get the help to make it happen. So,
yes,
okay.
Is Ryan's position? What he did last year? Oh, I never see him, but it's same
That is
job.
that.
Okay.
Eco toilet betterment exemption update. The October 31st date by which anyone in the sewer service area who wanted to avoid paying a betterment could have applied for and begun installation of an eco toilet has come and gone, and we have a report.
There were 7 inquiries about the program after the letter. The letter was sent to every property owner in the Little Pond Sewer Service area with the offer, and 7 calls came in and 7 site visits, and as a result 2 properties have gone through getting Board of Health approval, getting a plumbing permit, which was the requirement before October 31st to be enrolled in the betterment exemption program. One is a urine diverting toilet and one is a composting toilet. And they'll be part of the monitoring of these systems.
Great. Matt?
What was the reason other people didn't do it?
That's a great question. I think there were multiple reasons, and I think I can't categorize them, but they were either they wouldn't conveniently fit in the bathroom, so the remodeling of the bathrooms was complex. The form factor wasn't appealing. The idea of having a composter and the maintenance required was not appealing to others. And a couple thought that it would be a substantial savings over the betterment. And when they realized that the costs were pretty close, in other words, it was going to be about $15,000 to install the eco toilets or do the betterment, they didn't see a benefit. So it was really people were exploring it for cost, those people that were doing for cost savings.
You're talking now about the 7 people who are.
Yes,
who
we're
are
talking about the 7 people.
Right.
For all the people that didn't contact us, you know, I don't know.
Well, is it, you think financing was a problem?
No, not for the 7, not at all. It was not about not being able to afford the upfront cost of the eco-toilet installation at all. Unequivocally not that.
But we don't know about the resistance from more people to,
We don't know about the majority of people who didn't contact me.
Right.
No, I can't say.
Were any of the 7 people seasonal people, or are they all year round?
I can't remember exactly, but my sense was these are people who are either here year-round or here on the weekends,
Okay,
all year round.
okay.
Well, the eco toilets have been about half the cost, right?
No.
With
not
the
even-
5,000 incentive.
Oh, with the incentive.
Yeah,
It wasn't a double incentive for the.
it was just one incentive, it's 5,000, right? 5,000
There's
plus the 5,000
Well,
difference.
these people had the betterment incentive.
Yes.
They had
Just-
$18,000.
just- the
18,000 betterment, right? But then the 5 before.
No,
that-
No 5.
You
No,
couldn't,
5 on top.
you couldn't double
No,
that.
no, I mean that. I mean that, but if the eco toilet costs 15 to put in, let's just say, the cost of them would have been 10.
No,
Oh,
no.
Co-
it would be 15,
Be
but they
15.
wouldn't have to pay the 18 betterment.
No, they get the 5,000.
No, no, no.
No, no double dipping. You could have the 18 or you could have the 5, but you couldn't have both.
Right, but if you could have the 5,
Yeah.
And it
Oh, I
costs-
see what you mean. It would have been 10.
it
but
costs
then-
15.
And an 8, well,
and then you got the hookup cost, which
well,
you don't know.
if
but-
you put it in, why would you hook up?
No, what I mean is that, the savings, the hookup, 18,000 betterment plus hookup.
Right.
No, that's about
So that's
22.
23,000, let's say.
20 to
So
22.
even with a $23,000 incentive, they still chose not to do the eco toilet.
Not incentive, $23,000 cost for the sewer.
Right.
Right.
So it's incentive because they would
First-
save both 18 and the 5.
Right, it'd be 23, but they would be getting, the cost for the eco toilet would have been 10, roughly.
Right,
Out
so,
of their pocket, because they get 5 back.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Matt,
Let me, I don't know if this,
I don't know if it was, if it was
this
explained
explains
properly to them, obviously
something
not.
that Ron is trying to say, but it's always been my thinking that if you give people this option, these 2 options basically, the betterment or put in your own, go get your own financing, put in your own eco toilet, right? That people, it's much easier, the path of least resistance is just to say, I'm going to go with the betterment, it's financed over, what,
30 years.
30.
30 years? That's hard to beat. I mean,
Especially at 0% interest.
at 0% interest, why don't we consider in the future doing the same thing for eco toilets?
Wait, but-
Making them eligible for the betterment.
If you were in the state senate and could get a law like that passed, we could consider it.
No, wait a minute.
But you're not, and we can't.
Wait, let's step back a minute.
I don't think-
Let's step back a minute. The county has a program that will finance the innovative and technologies like eco toilets.
Right.
There is a program, a 20-year program, 5% interest.
5%.
Okay?
Yep.
That's what's there. So there is a program that will finance it.
Right.
In addition,
But
they
it's
get
5%.
5,000 back from the town for joining the program.
No, they don't.
No, they
Not if it's, not
they
if
cut
it is
that
the.
out.
Well,
Not if
they,
it's-
they could have gotten that one if they chose the $5,000 program, you're right.
Yeah.
But the other option was more attractive and they didn't want the other one. But you're right, they could have gotten the 5,000.
Right, they could have gotten 5,000, which means it would have been 10, the net to them would have been 10, but they could have financed the whole 15 or whatever through the county.
For
at
5%,
for
at
20 years.
5%.
So
Right.
if this is explained properly, it's, and set up
I
properly.
thought the $5,000 incentive was excluded
It is.
for anybody in the,
It is excluded for anybody in
They
the,
could have taken the 5 or they could have taken the 18, but they couldn't
but
do
they-
both.
but if that, once the sewer service area went in, I understood they couldn't take the 5 any
they
longer
couldn't get the $5,000.
unless they already had done it.
They could, but they would have been charged a betterment.
That's right, they would have been charged a betterment whether they did it, whether they connected or
Yeah,
not.
if any of them
Yeah.
who could add wouldn't want to do
But
that.
you
Yeah.
know, people who
Yeah.
came, who contacted us and I spoke with, through the Board of Health,
Exemption.
contacted the Board of Health, were not saying, oh, if I could only do this, annually as a payment, I would rather put in eco toilets. That was not the conversation at all. That was not
Of the 7 people that showed up. I mean, but there's,
Well, and of the 170 or so in the incentive program, remember the pie chart that I sent? I reviewed very carefully the reasons why people said no. And cost was only 10% of the reasons that people said no. So the majority of people were saying no for aesthetic, for functionality, for multiple reasons. That they were saying no not because of the cost. They were saying no because of what they would end up with at the end of the process. And I think that's just that's what the data says.
Yeah. These are people who had said they were interested in eco-toilets.
Right.
Most of them probably, if they were not interested in eco-toilets, then they would probably be much more interested in the cost. This is a general question that has to do with eco-toilets and has to do with IA systems. It's a general question. It's a general issue that we're going to have in the future. If we have a program that is set up by the town to provide 0% loans for people who do sewers as one possibility, and we have a program that requires people to do something else, like eco-toilets, IA systems, or whatever, then they're going to be required to do it to meet the TMDLs. They're going to be concerned about costs, and they're going to find that it's going to be difficult for us to provide the same kind of 0% loans for them. We're not going to be able to get a very even. It's not going to be a level playing field when we do that. And that's a concern that I have for the future.
Okay, well, your problem is that the federal funds that are used to fund the 0% loans cannot be used on private property for private installations. They can only be used on public property or for public, and that's what we're running up against here.
That's right, and that it is a problem of very uneven. It makes it easier to do sewers than it does to do other things in an area.
But you could
As long
also
as they're
do a
reasonable.
door-to-door survey as a private individual, a hypothetical that you're trying to drum up support, like the fellow that did the plastic bag thing.
Yeah.
So you can have any premise that you want. And ask people if they, and you propose that you want to petition for this loan business. And if you could get it, then would they be interested? If the answer, as I suspect, is because of my bias, that they would still say no, that should be valuable information to you.
If they have a choice of one or the other, you can get a good picture. But if we are ever going to do areas, I've tried to think this through as carefully as I could. If we are ever going to say in an area, we're not going to sewer, but we're going to require people to do something else, and we have other things that they can do, whether it's tidal remediation, or whether it's eco-toilets, or whether it's IA systems or something else, we're going to have to figure out how those are going to be financed in a way which doesn't cost people any more than it would to do sewering. In other words, why would they do it? Why would they agree to do it if it's going to cost them more than sewering?
it is just a matter of changing the legislation.
Yeah, but we've got to go into that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the reasoning was at the time for excluding. Well, you can understand the reasoning for excluding
Private property.
Jerry will tell you.
projects on private property, but at the same time, if it has a public benefit, then maybe there's a counter-argument that could be used.
Well, in other things, we do require people to do things on their private property, and we even pay for some things on private property once in a while in order that we serve a public purpose. But it's always a difficult matter. It's always difficult when you've got the choice between doing something public, big public projects, and many small private projects. It's always a problem of financing to make it a level playing field. It always is. And I think we're going to run into, I think this needs some thinking through and some ways of making it possible that we can take advantage of if it's lower cost to do the smaller things, if it's lower cost to do local, whatever it happens to be, instead of doing a big project, we've got to be able to take advantage of that cost reduction somehow. And that means getting funds for it or getting subsidies for it or something like that somehow. If it's going to be saleable publicly. That's just in general, overall.
Just, I'm sorry, it probably sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but I realized a long time ago that sewering and the laws to enable the sewering, the financing of sewering evolved at the same time. There was, nobody talked about eco toilets or outhouses. Nobody was going to finance an outhouse. But maybe it is time to revisit that because this project was special. Little Pond was special. We were using excess capacity in the existing sewage treatment plant. We had the mains pretty much, the forced mains in place. If you had to put in another sewage treatment plant, whole new system of mains, and it could be, we could be way beyond the $18,000 a year. That
No question.
So it's worth just noting this now and keeping it in mind as we go forward.
Yes.
There's another inequality that's come up with Oyster Pond and some of the other ones, that some of these projects like oysters and inlet widening and permeable reactor barriers, everybody knows that the town, if they're done, the town will pay for 100% of it. There'll be no betterment.
Yes.
Whereas the things like sewering and IAs and eco toilets that are associated with individual properties, there'll be some personal cost. So at any meeting, there are some people that stand up, and it's blatantly obvious, even though they claim otherwise, that a huge part of their reasoning is they want the 100% town cost one.
Right.
And somehow we have to address that.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you for the report and for all your work on this. It's now the time of the year where we re-elect or elect, as we choose, the officers of this committee for another year. Are there any nominations from the floor?
I move that the officers stay the same.
I'll second.
Okay. It sounds like a slate, which is vice chairman and chairman here.
Do you want to continue in that capacity?
Well, not for a lifetime, but I can do another year. It only feels like a lifetime, but only if Virginia does.
Yes, well, also, it's a substantial workload, but I'm willing to do it for another year. I just want to make sure that the committee is, comfortable with that. It takes about 20 hours a week. It's a lot of time.
It has been, definitely. All right, moved and seconded for discussion. Any other nominations? Okay, all in favor of the slate as proposed by Steve? Aye.
Resounding.
Resounding.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Apparently not. All right. Report of members and staff. We have a few things to report on, one of which is this that Sia has handed out. I wanted to explain what it is and where it's going.
Yep, there's great interest in Quissit on having information about the relay. They're very aware of oysters and Quissit and...
They want the oysters.
Huh?
They want the oysters?
No, they want to protect the... Quissit is incredibly well-traveled. There is a ton of foot traffic all year round and boat traffic. I mean, it's a very heavily used resource. And there's a land trust, the Quissit Harbor Land Trust, that it takes a lot of responsibility. I mean, they, with private money, maintain the knob, maintain the wall. I mean, the town is not paying for those things. It's private money, the cleanup, all this stuff. So and there's a boatyard there that manages half of the moorings or more that are in Quistit Harbor. So when we were doing the relay, we told them about it, and they wanted a couple of meetings, and they have kiosks. And so one of the things that they wanted as part of it is some information so that people who are in the area can see this. They're closed signs, closed contaminated relay signs, which is the official thing that we're doing, is we're moving a contaminated relay into Quistit, so they wanted to know. So this brochure was an effort by the Division of Marine and Environmental Services to be sort of the informational brochure that explains to the people who come to the area what's going on. And it will be color. I made black and white copies so you guys could all see it, but it's very, very pretty in color. And it will be put in the kiosk. There's a little place for brochures in the kiosks at Quistit. And then a map of the closed area will be in the kiosk as well, to help with enforcement as much as anything. And the Land Trust is very, very concerned about the reopening of relay of the area, because in October of next year, the area will open, just like Green Pond opened and West Falmouth Harbor opened, and we are, Quistit will open too. So they're very concerned about watching the actual relay, the process of harvesting, and not having it trample the eelgrass that's coming back. So we want to be very mindful of the heavy use of that resource and do no harm. And so this is part of that process.
Great.
Yep.
Sir,
Steve?
this is nice. I one question or suggestion. Are you concerned, well, would it make sense to have something in here to the effect that this won't interfere with moorings or swimming?
Well, the closed
Well, I
area-
mean, you know all about shellfish. Most of us know that a Quistit Harbor shellfish closure area just means that it's closed to shellfish. But somebody who doesn't know about shellfish might think it means it's closed. And they say, whoa, that's where my Herreshoff 15.5 is moored. What's going to happen here? Or I swim right next there, what's that going to do? You might want to stop
ask.
those objections at the
I will
beginning.
ask.
It says shellfish closure area.
Yeah, but you know that. It's your job. I'm talking about
You
the general
really,
public.
Ron.
That's right, it's your job.
It says that every year, right?
If they're moored in there on a regular basis, they should know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to prevent
They'll
you
squawk to
to
weather
reduce the number of
until
phone calls you
explained.
get.
Well,
Matt, I think you should turn the light back on, and I think you should turn
Yeah,
the,
turn that thing off.
Yes.
Yeah, good idea.
for the viewing audience at home, you're in the dark there. So just flip the switch at the end. There we go.
Okay, I have a report on the CLF lawsuit. If you remember, back in 2010, the Conservation Law Foundation sued the EPA on the premise that EPA was in error approving these TMDLs and in error approving the plans of Falmouth and other places. And their premise was that these plans were inadequate because they didn't involve everybody's septic system and every piece of road runoff. They said that EPA had been wrong for the last 40 years in concentrating only on what it deemed point sources, and that it should have included individual home septic systems and road drains as point sources and treated them the same as the others. And the EPA hadn't done that, of course. And, so it went to, it took about 2-3 years before it actually got to the judge. And if you remember, at the time, there was a lot of consternation and concern and much wailing and gnashing of teeth that the judge was going to come in here and order us to do this, and order the towns to do that, and order Cape Cod to do things. And it was going to be very expensive, and we really had better settle this case. Well, the case actually got in front of the judge in 2013, last August. And the judge, his first question was, let's talk about standing. And for those of you who don't know what that's about, it basically says, what right do you have to be here in this courtroom with this argument? And the judge concluded that CLF had no right to be in there with that argument because they didn't have standing. To have standing in a case like this, you have to bring in affidavits from a good number of people who show how they've been harmed by this lack of activity by the EPA. They didn't do that. So their cases were thrown out, with one small exception, which was the judge did say it appeared to him that they had a good argument that Massachusetts should have been doing its update of this 208 requirement, which is something that the feds have that requires, as a condition of the revolving loan fund money being distributed, the areas to which it is being distributed have to do a study from time to time showing that it's part of a larger plan of what they intend to do about cleaning up their water. So he said that piece should stay, but the rest of it he threw out. So as a result of that, the Cape Cod Commission and the state of Massachusetts got together and funded what we're now seeing is the update of the 208 plan. So, but CLF, after getting booted out the first time, came back and filed the same case again, this time with the necessary affidavits to provide the standing. So that was back in September of 13. This last week, a settlement agreement has come out between the EPA and the CLF. And I've read it a couple of times here, and I would say that basically it's a fig leaf for the CLF, because they lost the case. And nothing in this settlement makes us on Cape Cod do anything we weren't doing anyway. Okay? And just to let you know how much of a loss it was for them, they customarily, they engage outside counsel to take these cases. They usually get very high-priced firms from New York and Boston who take them because if they win, the government is obliged to pay the legal fees. This case, the first case, had run up extraordinary legal fees in excess of 6 figures. Wow. And they got nothing. They gave them, for this latest case, they gave them $40,000.
$40,000.
Which, as we all know, doesn't pay for much legal time.
Right.
So it was a financial debacle for CLF, and it was a policy debacle for CLF, because nothing came out of it that in any way said that EPA had done anything wrong, that EPA wasn't holding to the proper standards of what they should require from the communities, and it said the Cape Cod Commission is doing the right thing, and as long as they keep doing it on the timetable they have committed to, case closed. So
I think you predicted that, didn't you?
Yes.
In a column.
Yes. But the town of Falmouth contributed to this desirable goal because you remember along the way the town of Falmouth filed and hired an attorney to become an intervener in the case. If the case had gone forward, which of course it didn't because of the standing issue, but if it had, Falmouth would have been at the table when these kind of discussions were going to take place. But fortunately, once the standing issue was resolved, Falmouth couldn't join the case because there was no case. So at that point, it was quite clear Falmouth didn't have to be involved. But the fact that Falmouth was ready to be involved, I think, was very helpful to make it clear that this was not just an argument between bureaucrats, that this was an argument that the people who were paying the bills wanted to be part of. And so for a small effort on the town's part, I think we got our money's worth for that. So basically, they're saying what the commission is doing is the right thing to do, and as we all know, what the commission is doing is what Falmouth has previously shown them how to do. So I think Falmouth can take a couple of bows here.
Right.
For making good public policy come out of what 2 years ago looked like it was not going to be.
That's good.
Now, just a couple of comments. I think that it's good that things are clear now. But as you say, this lawsuit did get the funding to the
Right.
county
Right.
to do this 208. right?
That's
So
true.
In a way. So I don't look at this, in a way, they've achieved a major victory, in terms of what their interest was with regard to the Cape. In addition to what you said about the issues, is that what I was disturbed by from the very beginning, not disturbed, but basically questioned from the very beginning, was that if they had prevailed, we've had to sewer the whole place,
That's exactly right.
right? And I mean, not just here, but the whole country. Because it'd be a federal decision that every single septic system across the United States would then fall under that.
Well, anyone that contributed to it, to exceeding a TMDL in an estuary, I mean, that was the threshold.
Right.
If you had an estuary that exceeded its TMDL, you had to
Right.
adopt
Well,
these
but-
measures. Yeah.
But they're identified as point source pollution.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna deal
Which
with
the
it as
Clean
point
Water
source
Act
pollution,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so I don't know about the TMDL thing.
Right. No, you're right.
I'm your lawyer, I'm not, but, so, but as I look at that, so that was something, I even talked with Mark Rasmussen from the very beginning about that, and I said, you're cornering everything into one option, basically, where we're looking at all these other things, And the state we do have these IA systems that have been certified. We have certain things, even in terms of nitrogen reduction credit. So why eliminate that? Why eliminate the shellfish thing? Permeable reactive barriers, whatever it may be. All these other options that are out there that may work better or worse than others, but still, why close the door on it all with a decision like that? So that was something. But the good thing is that we got this, 208, I don't know what your opinion is on the 208 plan. I sent some comments today. I know a lot of people sent comments in on it today. I didn't have a chance to look at yours because I was feverish trying to get mine in before it got dark.
Yeah.
But so I think that is so that. But I would say that they got something good came out of it. $3.5 million or something to the county.
The coalition may have listened to you because they were co-plaintiffs in the first case, and they were not in the second
They
case.
dropped out, exactly, they dropped out. I don't know, I've talked with them, I've had a number of very friendly conversations with them about, but from the beginning. So I don't know but the main thing was, their interest area is like ours, to clean up the place. That's the water issue, that's it. So the fact that they had their way of looking at it versus maybe a more practical view on it, which prevailed, I think, in this case.
Yeah. That was good.
There's one other change that came out of it, and it's still sort of like a work in progress. And that is this update has decided to look at the problem of watersheds and TMDLs from a watershed basis rather than a municipal boundaries basis. And the way that Paul Noswicki from the Cape Cod Commission phrases it is that the solution should match the problem. And so you need watershed solutions and watershed regulations and jurisdiction that match watersheds problems. And so out of this 208 is going to come, and has been proposed in this draft, a new regulatory framework, I think you would have to say. And it will require various towns and water districts and so on to declare themselves to be basically responsible parties on a watershed basis. If the watershed is totally within the town, then it's pretty straightforward as to who the responsible party is. But where you have shared watersheds, and it turns out there are 35 of them, then there has to be a different arrangement. And in my mind, that's what's going to play out over the next several months, is how the various towns and water districts, because in some towns they don't have a water department like us, they just have separate governments that are called water districts, how those legal entities agree to be the responsible party and deal with the watersheds. The Cape Cod Commission is definitely not going to be the responsible party, and one simple reason is they don't have the authority to bond. And in order to solve these problems, you must have authority to bond, which towns and water districts do. So we're going to begin to see selectmen talking to each other in water districts on that.
Let's hope.
I think that this is a major step, just as you said.
It is a major step.
But I think it's not quite there yet.
I completely agree.
They're not, they've got so far, with there's a regulatory anchor.
Yeah.
That basically keeps us in. You can only drag that anchor so far at a time. But I have a feeling that by just acknowledging this approach, and if it's acceptable in the end, that we will end up moving to the next step, which would be starting really with the impacted water bodies. And look at it from that standpoint, not necessarily what you do in the watershed per se, but to look at it from the perspective, from that starting point, and looking at the whole situation from management of those to upstream interventions. And I think that that will come. But right now it's sort of saying, okay, watershed based. It's hard, it's not that different, but it is. Could be
It's evolving. That's why I called it a work in progress.
Yeah.
If you remember where it was 3 or 4 years ago when this suit first showed up, there was a great hullabaloo from some parties who got pretty quiet about it afterwards, that we ought to have a regional taxing authority.
Yes.
And that survived until the next election, when they all looked around and said, nobody is for this. And that was the end of that. But so that's ancient history, but we are getting to the point where responsible parties will be identified. And in most cases, it's the towns, or as you say, the water district in some cases. But basically, that's it. It is not going to be the county, and it's not going to be the commission, and it's not going to be a regional MWRA, so we know that. Matt?
Has there, and I'm just trying to catch up, has there been any progress with Walkway Bay or any further movement between Mashpee and...
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. We contacted Mashpee a little while ago and said, let's resume the dialogue here. Their spokesperson there had a European vacation in September, so we didn't do anything with that. I've been in contact with them since then, and with Andrew Gottlieb, who's a selectman over there. And his recommendation was to meet with, they've got a little kerfluffle going on because the sewer district and the water district are separate entities. They passed a piece of special legislation to combine them, but the special legislation wasn't done, as they're looking at it now, wasn't done to do what they want to do. So his short answer was, go ahead and meet with the sewer commission, because as of right now, they are the ones, but make sure that the town manager and the Board of Selectmen are invited so that they can all be part of the conversation when it takes place. So we'll work up a time to go over and do that. They're very keen on a project on the Childs River that SMAS...
Childs River?
Right. Was it Childs River, wasn't it?
Yes, Childs/Moonicus.
Moonicus.
Same thing.
SMAS looked at that and said that...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
The Quashnet Moonicus is the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Childs River is well into Falmouth.
Oh, this is in Falmouth.
Yeah.
Mashpee thinks it would be a terrific idea if Falmouth took this on.
Oh, sure, yes. I think it would be a terrific idea, too.
SMAS will study it for us for $250,000, but we haven't gotten to the stage of getting to that point yet. And it may turn out that it isn't all as valuable an impact as Mashpee thinks it is, but it'll be part of the conversation.
Oh, okay. So Mashpee's saying the Childs River has a significant impact on nutrient loading.
It does.
That's right.
It does,
and why don't you fix that first?
I'd like to see us
We
plan
better
to
do
do
our
that myself.
MEP report on McCoy, right?
I'd love to see us plan to do that.
Well, we probably want to at least explore whether it actually has the impact they think it does, and how much they want to help pay for it.
Right.
Well,
A lot of cranberry bogs.
they're paying for their part, we're paying for our part. We do need to get together and
Well,
decide how-
that we've all agreed on. We will get together, and it'll be a meeting. Their meetings are unfortunately the same Thursday night as ours, as a rule. So we may have to have a special meeting date that's different for,
Okay.
or we could have a joint one, or we could do something. But
Right.
but they meet the third Thursday.
It could be this.
We can
So what,
meet,
it
we
could
can
be-
meet early
Yeah.
or
One of our
something,
meetings.
and
Yeah.
in
But just
Mashpee
meet
or
in
here,
Mashpee.
or wherever.
That's true. We could do that.
Just,
Okay.
Is there, excuse me, before we get off this, is there a discussion on Quashnet River and Moonicus, which are shared parts of it and Mashpee parts of it.
I think we took a jump there. It was the Childs River they were talking about.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't, they're also interested in the Municus and
Yeah, they're
the
interested,
Quashnet.
they should be
But they,
cooperating with us on that, yeah.
yeah, Jesus, there's so many things going on.
The development at the head of the Quashnet is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And very dense. So
Yes,
they may be in a panic about that contribution.
yeah.
Yeah.
And saying, let's look at child. But there's gotta be, I mean, there has to be over 1,000 units up there
Really?
with that, what is it?
Southport?
Southport,
Yeah.
and they keep building. Every time I drive by, there's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
new going up.
And they're not required to meet the 12 milligrams per liter.
No, but don't they have cluster systems in Mashpee? For these
Yeah, they
new
do. I
developments?
don't know what they're required to meet, though.
Yeah,
What are they
but they're
required to
using
meet?
a nitrate system, which is like
Yeah.
pretty good.
I don't know. if
Well, we'll
those
all
are
learn more when we go to
Yeah,
Mashpee.
right.
septic system.
So I have a report
Sure.
too. I just passed this down, and there's one all the way for SIA, and it passed it this way, and so there'll be one for the press. So
yeah.
this is a report on the drilling that was done in Acapesket, and I've given you a map. Our current Little Pond Sewer Service area is Falmouth Heights and the Mara Vista Peninsula, so moving eastward, the next peninsula is Acapesket. And what we've said in the past is we don't have enough information both about the geology of the peninsulas and also about the groundwater quality. We got a $25,000 grant from the Cape Cod Collaborative to do some investigation on that. So you're looking at a map, and there you will notice a 1, 2, 3. Those are 3 wells that have been installed, monitoring wells. The deep well is on Seaview Drive, and it's number 1. And it went down, it was driven, the well was pushed down 80 feet so that we could get a real profile of what, and this is right at the center, more or less the mound of the peninsula. So they felt that this would tell us pretty clearly how thick the aquifer was and what the characterization of it was in terms of water quality. I don't have water quality data back yet, but I do have soil data. And I do have some information of measurements that were taken in the field. So they went down 80 feet. I was there. They took a sample of soils every 10 feet, and it was the most beautiful sand you have ever seen. So in terms of, is it a uniform geology? At that point, it was, and it was a significant depth. We were at about 25 feet above sea level. And so 80 feet is the total, 25 down
Excuse me,
to the
Virginia,
bottom.
Can you remind us the
Yes.
overview, the purpose of all this?
The purpose of this is, to fill a significant data gap. What's the geology and water quality on the peninsulas? We only have a smattering of data from seacoast shores. And you may remember the USGS was able to put a well in Mara Vista. So we're trying to get a better picture, real data, rather than supposition about the peninsulas. And we particularly want to know, where is the saltwater-freshwater interface? When we were looking at the PRBs in seacoast shores, that turned out to be a big surprise to the engineers, that the aquifer was much thicker than they thought, and that the freshwater extended out to the margin, and in fact out into the bay. So this is a beginning to fill in data gaps.
Mainly for PRB.
Yeah.
PRBs, it seems to me to be a good, we're still looking for a trial place, a pilot, and you will notice this Shorewood Drive runs pretty straightforward on the western side of this peninsula. So it's ultimately a potential for a demonstration project. Question?
I just wondering, can we get another well done? Is it possible somehow? I'd like to go right into Great Pond and see what happens as you go down. Right?
Well,
something like that.
you're not the only one. The U.S.
Yeah.
Geological Survey wants to do that
Oh, good.
also.
Okay.
And that requires a much more sophisticated kind of drill. So I'm letting them chase that
Oh,
one.
that's good. Okay, well,
But it's on the list. So just continuing the overview. So well number 1 is a very deep well that went down 80 feet. Wells 2 and 3 are what we call water table wells. And they they have a 10-foot screen and they straddle the water table. And once you measure the exact elevation at 3 points, you can determine a plane and you can determine the direction of groundwater. And that's part of what we need to know. We need to understand the groundwater regime and the flow paths better. The well number 1 is what we call a cluster well. So there's one well that was set at a very deep level and somewhat shallower, and then ultimately a water table well. So there are actually 4 monitoring wells, and they will collect water quality data from those 4 levels. They were able to measure salinity, and they were happy to report that at 80 feet you were absolutely in salt water. So it appears at that point we are about a third of the way down the peninsula, that salt water underlies the peninsula and fresh water is floating on top of it. So that is a useful piece of information. So that's where we are at this point. The wells were drilled just 2 weeks ago, and the last the water samples were collected on Monday. And we'll know in a couple of weeks what the water quality is.
Are we going to know the nitrogen
Yes.
for every level, from down to the salt water?
Yes, we will have 4, the cluster of 4 wells will know nitrogen at 4 different levels. And whether there is any in the salt water or not. Theoretically there shouldn't be. But the deepest well is clearly in salt water. The next well up is clearly in fresh water. So they were able to
Shouldn't
be definitive.
there be nitrogen in the salt water from the ocean? I mean, there's some nitrogen in the ocean at 2.6.
Well, I'm sure there's some, but it won't be elevated like 10 parts per million. It won't be something like that. So that's a progress report on the Acapessa drilling.
Okay, any other questions, Ron?
No questions.
Another report.
It's more of a report, I think, for you than for me, actually, or you guys. Monday and Tuesday was town meeting, and there were 3 articles related to water quality management related to our projects. There was one on the annual Article 26, which had to do with the acquisition by eminent domain, apparently, of a piece of property for a pumping station along...
In the mall.
Yeah, near the mall, in the mall.
In the mall.
Right, in the mall, but that was put up for indefinite postponement or something, and I don't know.
I'm sorry, then that's along the road, you're correct.
Wait, there were 2.
There were
Yeah,
actually
2, right.
4 articles on
And
it.
they get rid of one of them.
They got rid of one, yeah.
Got rid of one of them, because
So-
one of them was just a transfer, right?
Right.
And one was somehow compensating, but that one why was that indefinitely postponed, do you know why that?
We didn't need it.
Huh?
They didn't need it. Once they got the one at the mall, they didn't need the other one.
One way at the bottom.
They were 2
Two
options.
separate points.
2 separate
okay,
pots.
okay.
If the mall thing hadn't worked out, this one might have had to be the alternative, but
It wasn't necessary.
the mall did work out, so.
Okay. Then on this special town meeting warrant, there were 2 articles, both related to wastewater, really. The first one was a compensation to the homes on the low-pressure sewers for the extra cost. And so that there'd be some level playing field in a way to the cost of those on gravity versus the low pressure. Low pressure hookup costs are going to be much more. So this question I have still, and I know that it was answered at the meeting, though, is that where in the budget is the money for that in the Article 28, 39.5 million? Where I never saw a line item there. It's not in the. I looked it up in the appendices to the CWMP, and it just doesn't specify anything about paying for those units. So I don't know where that $3.5 million or $3 million is coming from, basically.
Okay.
If it's is there such a line item somewhere in the?
Yes, there is. I had the same question. So I looked at the submission to the state for the SRF application. And there is a line item specifically $4,500 times number of parcels, 3.12 million.
So that's in the 39.5 million
Yeah.
amount? Okay.
Yep,
All
yep,
right.
it's there.
Okay, good. All right, well, anyway, that was approved, which was great. Good for those folks. And the second, I didn't quite understand the reason.
They got rid of it.
They dropped.
No, they got
It
rid
was
of
a
it.
non-starter.
It was an idea that
I just thought
didn't
that-
work. Wouldn't have
There
worked.
could be some conflict in the neighborhood, but
No, no.
yeah.
I think the selectmen were, when they realized that they had this issue about the difference in cost, they were sort of coming up with different ways of addressing it. And the two ways that they came up with in a very short time frame, because it had to get into the warrant, were
Right.
these two. But by the time the town meeting actually came around, the second one became quite clearly impractical and nonsensical until they dropped it. But the first one, they needed to go forward.
All right. Anyway, yeah, I wasn't quite sure about the second one either, just in reading it, but unless there was something more, I mean, there's like an electricity charge, there's some warranty payments, there's things like this for the grinder pump apparatus that are more costly than the gravity, in addition to the equipment, and possibly the excavation will be more, because these are bigger things, so.
I think they were aware of it, and the explanation said the selectmen are committed to equalizing the cost.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so there were three, so that's one passed, important one.
Yes.
The other one-
Well, I think everything that the selectmen felt needed to pass did pass.
Yeah.
And the others were contingency articles, and they weren't needed, so
Right.
they were indefinitely postponed.
And the other reports of individuals?
I have a request.
John?
It's pretty clear that the Little Pond project now is out of our jurisdiction. It's under the direction of the DPW. But I do think it would be useful for us to have updates of where we are in that process so that we can pass that along to the public. In other words, how close are we to letting a contract on that project? Who the successful bidders are. I mean, I think that sort of information, without getting our oar into the actual what's going on, but passing information on to the public about where we are in the process and who's doing what and what the timetables are, we can act as one of the ways of passing that on to the public.
Usually Jerry is here, and he would be able to do that kind of thing when he's here.
But I think, I don't know whether you want it as an agenda item, but clearly under reports, it's
I
easy
think
enough once or twice a month. I mean,
pass that
right now, the package and the design have been submitted, and it's under review by the state. And I don't think we'll hear back until the beginning of January. But I think your point is well taken.
Yeah, the more information that gets out, the better. 'Cause-
Well, just so people have a sense of
what's
because it's a
going-
big project,
Yeah.
sense of where we're going.
I have a different request. John had this idea that we should hear from John Ramsey, and I second that.
For next time around,
Or for some time, but not too far away, about the
Bourne's
Bourne's.
Pond flooding in the coastal, yeah. That will go on an agenda. I suppose we should talk about who's
I
here.
mean, do we have to pay him, or do we have to vote on paying him? or-
No, well, yes and no. There's something in the budget for public meetings. The question is how many?
Whether the public meeting should just be us, or whether we should have the Conservation Commission and other interested parties part of it at the same time is kind of the issue right now. And
Right.
when is Ramsey available with the other one? But-
Well, that's right.
Or at the extreme, it's a couple of us, John and I, and whoever else was interested, could go talk to John privately, if that's
Also-
legal and
I
financially
think
feasible.
it's very much in the public interest for us to have a dialogue with the
Sure.
community about, what are the issues of proceeding with this project. And
Sure.
I think it has to be a fairly public process.
I'd also like to go a little beyond this in terms of some other dimensions in terms of finance. What's the life expectancy under storm conditions? One in a 100-year storm, one in 20-year storm, if there's a cost, if we assume it'll get wiped out or something, or will not, once in a while, how is that cost factored into the estimate of the savings that this would have for sewer and this
I
kind of
think
thing?
their explanation is that the beach and the road will be washed out and the bridge will stay.
That was the answer given the last time.
Yeah,
But you're right, these are all the questions that should be part of this conversation when we get him here.
just, one more note though.
Sure.
Just quick one. If you folks want to go down to Little Pond to see the aquaculture operation, it's gone.
It's gone, absolutely.
Okay, everything is out. I mean,
Till next
last
spring.
time I was there, there were some bags remaining on the shore, but I think they're probably gone by now.
Yeah.
They were there, so
Well, it's been a great success, and you and Sia, certainly out of this crowd, have been the moving parties,
Right.
and we really
Right.
appreciate it.
I think it's, again, we have to go back to Marine Environmental Services
Yeah.
Department and Ryan
Yes.
Resendez for his due diligence and the guidance there, because they've really picked up the ball on that. And I think that, that it's gone very, very well this year. And the SMAST, I've seen them go by several times during the monitoring. So we get a report early next year, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll see what comes of it.
The only
And
other,
no, Matt Weeks was terrific with the relay. I mean, his local knowledge and his farming sense is we are so fortunate. Matt is invaluable because the relay locations are critical, and he picked them last year. And we had resounding success and hardly any mortality. Green Pond looks great. And he picked them this year, and he just really is a key piece of this process.
Right.
On the taste test comparison, the two I can't tell the difference.
Wow.
Good.
I mean, yeah.
Did you get some from Green Pond?
Yeah, I got
Of course you did, right?
Great.
Nice.
All right, review and vote on minutes of prior meeting. They all went around through the emails. Everybody saw the minutes. I didn't get any feedback, but if anybody has any, we'd be happy to hear it. Additions or corrections?
I read them, they seemed okay to me.
Okay.
Now that we talked about the 27 parts per trillion, I did include that because I saw that. It's on page 2. It's one of the bullet points that begins in general. Should I just take out that entire sentence? Because I did say that it has a low salinity, and then, that might exacerbate a phosphorus problem. I could just take out that sentence since we
Sure.
discussed that.
Yeah, right, since it wasn't correct. That's fine.
Oh, okay, that's these minutes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Oh, okay.
All right, any further additions or corrections? So a motion to approve the minutes as amended,
Motion?
moved.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Right, we have it.
I abstain.
Matt abstained, not having been here, right? Okay. The final item on the agenda, we've been waiting 6 months for Matt to come back and do this. You're gonna move to adjourn?
So moved. Mr. Chairman.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All opposed, we adjourn. Thank you.